Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this special discussion, part of Solus Nua's Festival of Prime Cut Productions. Prime Cut is a leading and award-winning theater company based in Belfast, and we're so excited to share their dynamic work with our audiences. My name is Rex Darty. I'm the Artistic Director of Theater Programming at Solus Nua, which is a multidisciplinary Irish arts organization. Solus Nua, which means new light in Irish, is based in Washington, D.C., and our mission is to present and produce the best of contemporary Irish art to U.S. audiences. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce our panel now, and then we'll hear some remarks from our festival sponsors at the Northern Ireland Bureau, and then we'll dive right into today's discussion. So with no further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce you all to our moderator for today's discussion, which is Matt Torney, who is originally from Belfast. Matt is now the Artistic Director of Theatrical Outfit in Atlanta, Georgia. He was previously the Associate Artistic Director at Studio Theater in DC. He has directed at Solus Nua. He's also on our advisory board, and I'm very happy to say he's been a great friend and colleague over the years. Welcome, and thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Emma Jordan is the Artistic Director of Prime Cut Productions. A native of Belfast, she is recognized as one of Northern Ireland's most respected and prolific theater practitioners. Thank you so much for being here today, Emma.
Thank you.
Una Nicoan is the executive producer of Prime Cut since 2009 and is delighted to be part of the festival. Thank you so much for being here, Una. Anne McReynolds has been the chief executive of the MAC since it opened in 2012, and she has led the development of the venue for many years prior to that, and believes that as an inclusive center of artistic excellence and a highly successful and welcoming social space in the Belfast city centre, the MAC has a vital role to play in Northern Ireland's recovery from the pandemic. Thank you for being here, Anne, and best wishes with all of that. And Ciaran Bagnall is here, and he's the creative director of Prime Cut Productions. He trained at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama in Cardiff and was made a fellow of the college in 2017. Ciaran has worked extensively in Ireland, Northern Ireland, the UK, as a lighting and scenic designer. His work has been seen at the Lyric, the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Abbey Theatre, the National Theatre, the Globe in London, and of course, at Prime Cut Productions. Thank you and welcome, Ciaran. Their full bios can be seen on our website, and I encourage you to check out more of their very impressive credentials. Thank you everyone for your time and insight that you're sharing with us today on creating new work in Northern Ireland. I'm looking forward to hearing more from all of you momentarily. But Solus Nua is delighted that this festival of Prime Cut Productions is sponsored by the Northern Ireland Bureau here in Washington, D.C. As the only contemporary Irish arts organization in our nation's capital, Solus Nua is proud to receive their support and partnership from the Bureau as we both serve as ambassadors of Irish culture to the United States. And it is my great honor now to introduce Eamon McConville, who's going to share a few words on behalf of the Bureau. Eamon is the Deputy Secretary of the Northern Ireland Bureau. The Bureau is the diplomatic mission of the Northern Ireland Executive in North America, and are longtime supporters of Solus Nua. Thank you so much, Eamon, and we're happy to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Rex, and we're absolutely delighted to be part of this wonderful collaboration with Solus Nua and Prime Cut Productions. You know, when I think about the mission and the ethos of both companies, it aligns so well with the work and mission of the Bureau itself. In the Bureau, our mission really is to showcase Northern Ireland as a creative, innovative, and outward-looking place where people want to come to visit us and work with us and learn with us. And we've worked with Solus Nua for many years because of the work that you do as ambassadors and advocates for arts and artists, promoting contemporary culture and creativity from across the island of Ireland. We're so conscious that the work that you present is cross-cultural, representing Ireland North and South, contemporary, globally diverse society, one where culture is shared across borders, ethnicity, and economic lines. And of course, Prime Cut Productions are one of Ireland's leading independent theatre companies based in Belfast. And, their three strands of work, create, innovate, and participate, completely resonate with the Bureau's own mission. The Bureau's delighted to be partnering in the forthcoming Digital Theatre Festival of Prime Cut Productions, which we all know includes 4 US premieres. And as a forerunner of that, today we have this, what is sure to be a fascinating panel discussion with all of the key people involved behind the work of Prime Cut. So I'll leave it there for now, Rex, and without further delay, my pleasure to pass now to panel moderator, theatre director and Belfast-native, Matt Torney.
Thank you very much. I am just thrilled to be in a room with all of these amazing Northern Irish people. I was just saying before we started recording what it feels like to be in a room hearing these voices and seeing all of these people who I've known for years and loved for years. I just want to make a bold statement to kick us off, which I think really embodies what Prime Cut is all about, that there is so much more to Northern Ireland than the political situation there. So much more creativity, so much more energy, so much more depth. And every single person on this call has contributed to both exploring that, expanding that, and making work that reflects that. I've been an audience member of Prime Cut Productions since I was a teenager. I think the first show I ever saw was a production of Mark Ravenhill's Shopping and Fucking, which was the first kind of in-your-face British play I saw. And I remember that whenever someone would say, do you want to go to the theatre? Generally to be going to see Brian Friel, a Brian Friel play at the Lyric, or it'd be something about the troubles of Irish identity. And then all of a sudden, here I was sitting in a room, seeing incredible Northern Irish artists telling a story that was about us, but not about us. And that kind of idea of the stage, of Prime Cut as a meeting point between Northern Ireland and the rest of the world, what we could say is a gaze looking outward, looking to get involved in bigger conversations than other theatres where the gaze could be considered looking inward, was something that was revolutionary for me. And something that I kind of try and embody in my own work. So today I want to talk about two things. First of all, what makes Prime Cut work so good? Because across the decades, the work has been just consistently excellent on multiple fronts. And as you can see from the programming in this festival, completely different. They do completely different things. They look at things in completely different ways, and everything is fresh, innovative, and exciting. And the second is, what is possible when we expand our conception of Northern Irishness or Northern Irish theatre beyond political considerations and cast it onto a bigger canvas? So first up, I want to ask Emma, Artistic Director, just broadly, tell us about Prime Cut Productions, about your work and what you hope that it achieves.
Thank you very much for all of your kind words. I suppose I kind of feel a bit like you, and you say that you saw Prime Cut's work whenever you were a teenager. Whenever I was a young actor, the group of artists that started Prime Cut were friends of mine, but I from the outside also had the same experience that you're describing. Whenever I saw work like Death of the Maiden and Who Shall Be Happy, and Two, all of that work was just so refreshing. And there's a central kind of artistic ethos in the company that started in the 90s with those artists who very deliberately set out to make work that wasn't of this place but could reflect back onto it. And I think that in my tenure with the company, which is now 20 years, in different guises over the years, different roles, but I think that I have tried to honor that original concept and idea. And I think that runs through, like if you cut any of us open, all of the team and the board, I think, that's what it would say is, that we want work that that speaks to this place, but not necessarily of this place. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. But that whatever piece of work that we do, and they've all taken very many forms, that it somehow illuminates and helps us grow in perception or ideas or, you know, thoughts about this place. You know, Northern Ireland is a peculiar place to grow up in, to live in. Very often the question, you know, for artists is not why did you leave? It's why did you stay? And, you know, I certainly can remember a moment of consciousness for myself of, you know, being a young actress and going to London and doing a show and having the opportunity at that time to get, you know, a really good agent. But it was on the basis of, but you have to move to London. And I suppose that was the first time that I really considered the connection between the desire to participate in and make art being deeply connected for me personally in this place. You know, I don't know if I would have been an artist if I had grown up in a different place. So it's a, you know, it's an eternal love-hate triangle, to be frank, because it's not the easiest place to exist in. It's very, very, can be very, very frustrating, but there's so much about it that I love. And actually, you know, I'm a Thran kind of a woman, and the provocation that you live with every day to make work in Northern Ireland is kind of grist to my mill, you know, and there's a kind of tenacity that's required, I think, to make theatre in the first place, and to make theatre in Northern Ireland, multiply that tenacity by, you know, 10%, 100%, you know, and so it helps to be really stubborn. You know?
So I just want to pick up on that, you know, because your response to the provocation is not just to dig in and do the same thing over and over again. We're going to do this, you know, realism, new Irish plays, go, 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 go. Like, it's everything from international collaborations to minimalist stuff, the tour shows, to like installation-based work. What are the core questions that you ask when you're embarking on a new project, or when you're deciding what to program, that keeps it so fresh and alive?
I mean, I don't think it's so analytical. Yeah, it's instinctive. And quality of writing is really, really is high up on that agenda. A sense of internationalism is high up on that agenda. And, you know, at times there's some stories that just need to be told. For example, The Border Game by Oisin Kearney and Michael Patrick, which we've it just came down last week in the Lyric Theatre. That was a commission because we knew that the centenary was coming up. We love those writers, and they've got really fresh perspective. They're super talented, and we commissioned them to make a piece of work about the border, because sometimes it's so politically difficult to deal with the issues of place and identity in Ireland. And theatre can create a really, really, obviously, I mean, you know this, Matt, this is why you do what you do too, is a really safe space to ask really, really difficult questions. And to change the political narrative where it becomes a human narrative. And I suppose a sense of humanism and and I think empathy, the extension of empathy, in a conflicted society like Northern Ireland, theatre has a really unique part to play in our evolution culturally as we've moved through the peace process and into the, you know, a new space. So, you know, we all want to make work that changes the world. I mean, we want to create systemic change. We want to change thoughts, ideas, minds. So, you know, theatre is a beautiful art form if that's your impulse as an artist. You know, it gives you every mechanism. And I think that's where the palette, probably the varied palette, that's why it looks that way, because the drive comes from that absolute impulse to, shake things up and and change the story. So and we've got millions of ways that we can do that as artists. And also I'm very privileged that as an artist, I also have evolved in my tastes, and that the company has evolved. We've all evolved together, and our priorities have changed as the company has changed. I mean, we're really, really committed to developing new artists, to creating reasons for artists to stay and work here. And we've worked really hard at making the circumstances in which to facilitate their development, because that's really important to our company. Because 30 years ago there was none of that. There was there was really no reason to stay, I think, for the most part, for any sane human being as an artist. So if we can contribute to creating that kind of environment. And at the minute, I think Belfast is absolutely on fire with talent.
Belfast is booming.
No, it honestly, Matt, is the most, artistically, it's the most exciting time that I have witnessed, in the 30 years of, working in theatre.
The festival, I think, captures that magic. There's just so much in there. It's just the lenses, the different talents, and also a lot of the same people, but just asking different questions in different ways. Just want to Una, I want to ask you a question as a producer. So you got these artistic questions that kind of combust and create this art, but also Prime Cut is touring nationally, internationally within Northern Ireland. They're doing stuff like this partnership with Solas Nua, where they're touring digitally. How do you go about connecting or thinking about the work that Emma and the team are making, and then sending it out into the world?
Well, I mean, I think like everything else, the first thing to really bring on board is that it's a team effort. It's not just me, it's Emma, it's Ciaran, it's the rest of the team as well, and also the people that we work with. It's also, I think, important to say we did do all of that lot of touring until quite recently, less so in the last 2 years. But hopefully this is the kickstart to that beginning to happen again. And thankfully there have been some feelers out both on an Island of Ireland basis and also farther afield for the work to be shown, hopefully going into 22-23. So fingers crossed we're able to do that. Emma was awarded the Paul Hamlin Breakthrough Award in 2014. And as part of that, that was about her development as an artist. And one of the things that she did, which was an incredible gesture, was to actually give that the vast majority of that investment back into the company. And one of the things that was part of that was an investment in me as a producer, and also in the company, in joining a big international network called IETM. And going to that and meeting other producers around the world, I mean, it was an absolute lesson in terms of the craft of producing and how you make connections and the rest of it. So that really, really helped. But I think ultimately as well, and I mean, it's a much hackneyed word these days, is the idea that there is authenticity at the absolute heart of the work that we do. It is a reflection of the voices of the people who have potentially lived this experience or want to speak of the experiences. So while the work that we do removed is of Northern Ireland, but it's also very much a story that could be shown in many, many countries throughout the world, and not just the English speaking world. And that's, I think, also important. So similarly, you had the same story with Scorch by Stacey Gregg. So a lot of the shows that we have toured internationally speak to a very Northern Irish experience. It's, as you said earlier, the outward gaze that also becomes by itself an inward gaze, in that in gazing out, you can start to self-reflect, but also you have something to say to people and audiences across the world that isn't just about an old narrative of what Northern Ireland should be, but that's actually creating a different picture and starting to do international conversations. I'm a big believer in social media and the way it works, in terms of just forming relationships that don't just last for a 1 week gig with somebody, but rather just sharing your own personal stories and keeping people abreast of what the actual company is up to and whatever else. And yeah, absolutely taking on board what people say back to us as well, you know, with the border games specifically. the very idea of us doing a live show, being able to do a 3-week run at the Lyric, was last August something we were still crossing our fingers about. On the opening night, people are going, and where is it touring to? And we're all going, we got it in a theatre. But that hasn't stopped. And with any luck, that impetus will carry on. So I think it's just a combination of those things, of sort of creating the international connections and relationships that are real and sustainable and long-term, and understanding that audience, like the shows that we make, should be as relevant to audiences outside of Northern Ireland as they are in, while still speaking and remaining authentic to this place.
What's interesting about the language that you're using is how it ties directly into the words internationalism and humanism that Emma used. It's like those are not just ideals, they can also be practices, like going to international festivals, engaging specifically in those dialogues. And then humanism, it seems like, both in terms of resonance, but like treating people well, authenticity in the room. I think that's a hallmark I've always noticed in your work, Emma, that kind of deep authenticity and sense of company.
Yeah, well, you try to be kind. You know, I think, having been an actor and being on the other side of the table, helped form a kind of ethical way in which I kind of I want the room to feel like, and I want actors to feel safe, because it's not always the case.
I hear you. Kindness is a word that I'm hearing more and more often in America, particularly in Atlanta, and we're talking about some of the racial equity issues. Anne, just wanted to change tack a little bit. You have had a front row seat running like two of the most important venues in Northern Irish theatre for a very long time. What have you seen in your time sitting in that chair that you think defines Northern Irish theatre, or identifies it as different from theatre in other countries, cities, places?
Thanks for an easy question, Matt. Thanks very much for that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Well, just before I answer that one, it's been really shocking for me. I don't know if you noticed, I kept taking notes, because so much of what Emma and Una said, they're literally using the words that we use in the MAC. You know, Emma said that, a safe place to ask difficult questions. That's how we describe the MAC. There's I think we know the answer now to whether good people, it's only good people who can make good art. I think that's been proven to not be the case. But in terms of Prime Cut's USP, there is, as you'd said, all those, they're very, very good people who care deeply and passionately about what they do. And this is from the start, the very, very beginning, right through. And just on, reflecting as Emma and Una were talking, the thread that has gone through from my perspective has been a pursuit of excellence, an absolute ambition, and courage in a place where courage is in political courage of any kind is in short supply, I think, in the world at the minute. And the people on this call, from my perspective, embody all the best hallmarks of courageous, relentless, as Emma says, absolutely relentless. Emma said you have to have tenacity to make theatre in Northern Ireland. You also have to have tenacity to make a theatre in Northern Ireland. So what makes Northern Ireland, I have been thinking about this recently. I've been talking to Simon McGill, who's the creative director in the MAC, who also happens to be one of the founding partners of Prime Cut, along with Jackie Doyle and Stuart Marshall and Aidan Lacey, God rest his soul. There's such a great deal of pressure. There's a trend at the minute in UK theatre around hyperlocalism, and I suppose I haven't worked out in my head, and I'm sure somebody cleverer than I has, about why that is related to the pandemic, and why, well, we all know, everybody apparently is binging on Murder, She Wrote as the antidote to the crazy whirling world in which we're all living. So many theatres throughout the UK are pursuing an agenda of hyperlocalism, and every fibre of our being in the MAC responds against that. Simon in particular is horrified. I mean, we're obviously, the MAC, as with Prime Cut, as with any theatre maker, theatre place, is deeply rooted and aims to be deeply rooted in the context within which it operates and works. That's absolutely, of course, to be taken as read. On the other hand, in Northern Ireland, you could say that the situation Northern Ireland got into happened as a result of, and continued to leave a legacy for many decades thereafter, because of an unwillingness or an inability to look outward. Instead, it was defined as a deeply inward looking, tearing ourselves apart over our differences, and it was all inward. So those of us of this age, well, I mean, Brexit has compounded it. The idea that we would just shut up shop and say, well, we're in Northern Ireland, we're going to just do Northern Irish work, whatever the hell that means, is absolutely the antithesis of certainly what any of us in the MAC, and I imagine, well, I know anybody in Prime Cut's about. So Prime Cut's, as I said, deeply scrupulous, highly sophisticated approach to making theatre, which is about looking outward, is deeply political. You know, I know that you don't want to talk, I mean, we all know that everything is political. That is nowhere more true than in Northern Ireland. But this idea, this willingness and this desire to connect, not only locally and personally, but also internationally and nationally in a way that is meaningful, is critical in 2021 in Northern Ireland.
I suppose what I'm hearing you say when you're talking about, the hyper-localism versus something that's more outward looking, is this about the availability of narratives? It's like, if all of your narratives are ones you get from looking in the mirror, then it creates a certain type of politics with a capital P, but actually, if you look beyond that, you create space for new things to emerge. When you say safe place, what do you mean?
Thank you, because I can hear in your cheeky little voice.
we say the same thing at our theatre in Atlanta, but I've been really thinking about the limits of language recently. So I'm like,
Are you suggesting I'm using hackneyed and corrupt language for it?
No, I don't. I wouldn't suggest that for a second.
So I am so old. In the old days in Northern Ireland, with peace funding, we used to talk about a neutral space, which is just absolutely hilarious to me now. The idea that any kind of space anywhere in the world, nevertheless in Northern Ireland, is in any way neutral. So a safe space is about our position in the MAC, where we place ourselves within this deeply polarized, discursive context in which we are all living in 2021, and it's got nothing. It's way beyond Northern Ireland, guys. It's to do with equality across every single matrix, and the fact that increasingly I feel that to create space, literally and metaphorically, within which deep disagreement can be acknowledged and coexist, has never been more important. And again, that inability to see the other's point of view is, again, a complete version of why the politics in Northern Ireland played out the way it did. And let's not forget that the act of empathy within which we are exploring the minds and behaviors and thoughts and prejudices and experiences of others is in fact art. That's what it's actually about. So my goodness, the fact that Prime Cut, that Emma's talking about theatre as a safe place for difficult conversation, the fact that the MAC is, because to be perfectly open and frank, the MAC is not even 10 years old. So in the early days, it's difficult to take a particularly strong position in Northern Ireland, because you're going to piss off somebody, whatever you do. So now that we've moved, the MAC has now moved and is embracing all the many political issues that, a cultural venue, of course, needs to engage with, that we were less confident and a bit too wet behind the ears to even be thinking about. We were just trying to think, how in the name of Jesus do you run this thing? How do we do it? Now that we know what we don't know and know what we do know, you know, let's get involved and let's get. I mean, we had somebody who was no platformed. I had to no platform somebody because of a particular context around an International Women's Day program. I am never going to allow myself to be in that position again. And that's another story, which I don't think I've even told Emma about it, but I am still sick to my stomach because it was a decision, you know. So, you know, Matt, everybody, we all know that there are certain areas that we're not allowed to talk about anymore. And that doesn't sound like a good thing to me.
Well, I'll say, and I will say that, like, cheeky questions aside, when I was young and, you know, studying dance and things at the old Museum Arts Centre and seeing plays there, it felt like nowhere else in the city, you know, that there was a freedom of being.
It's lovely to hear.
Well, you know, it's true, and it seems like the ethos still stands. Ciaran, great to see you. By the way, Ciaran's one of my old drinking buddies. Great to see you on here. When you look at this,
and collaborator.
And collaborator, but I suppose maybe in Northern Ireland that's the same. When you look at these 4 plays, like, you open up the creative team, it's Ciaran Bagnall designer, Ciaran Bagnall filmmaker. You know, it seems that as creative director of Prime Cut, you're not just sort of gun for hire who comes in and designs a show, but a creative force within the kind of thinking of the company. How would you define your role as creative director, and how have you seen it playing out in the work we're going to see in this festival?
Well, I think that's something that's sort of been developing, as Emma says, you know, over the last 14, 15 years. That's Emma and I've been working with, and that's been that relationship, and that's, you know, how we connected from that very first moment in the very first production we did, and our conversation. That's been a development of our conversations over that time, and I suppose is the desire within my own career to kind of work towards something meaningful. I mean, in no small way, is, you know, that I mean, that's basically is like Prime Cut is my theatrical home. That's where my heart is and where I feel it is that's my safe place. Is that office, and is in with this company, these incredible warriors of people that I work with, and I'm incredibly privileged to work in a lot of different places, as you know, and sort of being away and sort of being, you know, the bigger venues and RSC and national, whatever, all these things. But it's when I come back home and literally sit in that office that I actually feel genuinely at home in my heart and my ethos, and it's something that I've tried to sort of focus in my own career to the what's it all about? What are we, you know, why are we doing this? And what are the stories you're telling? Because as a designer, you know, you come from it from a right perspective where you're brought onto teams later in the game, and there's a power play of creative teams and how they're made, and you certainly don't have any decision on what the programming is or what you even get to work on. You know, I remember saying to Emma years ago about, God, I'd love to design a show that I pick for myself in a way, not that I would direct it or whatever, but that I would sort of that I would have that chance to pick something I want to work on. And Emma said, well, that's absolutely critical. And I said, well, but that's not the position I'm in as a designer, as a freelance designer. That's just not how those roles work, and that's fine, and that's the way it is. So that was a conversation I think that with Emma and I just kept sort of creeping up and the sort of late night conversations, and you know, the more doing with it, the more that I kind of wanted to be more part of the ethos of the company and to be a bigger role in these decisions, and for my own work and for my own head and heart to really kind of, you know, invest properly into an idea and into you know, yourself really, and myself and these guys, you know, these guys here, and to invest that with them. Because whenever, you know, I trained across the water. I mean, when I left school, there was no sort of technical training in Ireland. There's Trinity, there's drama courses in Trinity and Galway, but the Lear wasn't about, or there's no technical side, so I had to go with Cardiff. But the idea was always to come home, always to go and learn my trade and bring it back. I always had that faith in Irish theatre, and that was always the end game. So yeah, so this is me, living my best life. This is exactly what I've sort of worked and wanted to be part of for so long. Does that answer? I feel like
absolutely. I mean, because it's about the creativity behind it all, and building on this idea of self, or this idea of home, or desire to come home. When you work in other places, do you experience like your Northern Irishness in your work, like, or in your design? Do you think there's something about where you're from that manifests in the way you interact with the world?
Ooh. There must be, because it is who I am, and it's where my instincts come from. I think, as Emma said, there's maybe a certain tenacity, a certain just going for it, I think.
Like, I feel like I need to interrupt here. I would say that your most Northern Irish trait is that you only speak whenever it's really important. Is such a Northern Irish kind of male particular psyche that whenever I first started working, we're going, what's going on with this guy? And now we've got to the stage where he just goes, and I know exactly what's going on. But you've definitely got so much better over the decades.
No, the most important thing to do is listen in any room.
Yeah.
What we said?
Sorry, just deep personal questions about identity, how to share with our American friends.
It must do. I can't pinpoint a particular element of a design, because, like I say, it varies so much, which is something, again, I'm very proud of. And I love the variety of shows that we produce, and the work in Prime Cut. I mean, and obviously, what's part of this festival at the moment, I mean, there's nothing to say about the community work we do and our outreach programs and the diversity and the range of that kind of stuff as well. Is extraordinary. It's fantastic, and approached in the exact same way, with the exact same ethos and passion and creative energy for any of our sort of productions. It's the same force, and 9 times out of 10 the same teams that produce those. So for me, they're also equally very valid energy. I don't know.
Could I just come in just on that, Ciaran, and the idea of how we bring our Northern Irishness with us wherever we go? I think it is difficult probably to sort of isolate what that means, because it's so ingrained in us and it's so much a part intrinsically of who we are.
Yeah.
But just as one of the most mental and most amusing things is to observe a Northern Irish person work in the room in the foyer of a theatre when they've come back from an extended period of time, either in Dublin or New York. And the extraordinary energy and confidence and in-your-faceness that is so the opposite of what it is to be to be Northern Irish, that we all find so intoxicating and attractive, but is so not us. Has given many hours of fun to this old woman.
So I mean, the context of this conversation is as an introduction to the work of the company, or discussion about Northern Irish theatre, to audiences in Washington D.C. and America, who are going to be, many of whom are going to be seeing Prime Cut's work for the first time. What in your dream imaginings, what do you hope that, and this is a question for anybody, what do you hope that American audiences will take from these stories, or this collection of works? What do you hope it makes them think or feel?
I suppose one way that I think about it, there's a website, right? It's a platform for Prime Cut's work, and I do have to delineate my left nut isn't, we've helped produce it, but yes, it's not a Prime Cut production. But you know, it's fabulous for the company to there's like a sense of acknowledgement and you know, feel a bit appreciated that, you know, Rex has seen in our work something that he thinks is interesting, and you know, that's good, especially, you know, this past 2 years when it's been really hard to keep kind of going to understand what to do. But so it's great for the company. For me personally, I really hope I think it's a really exciting group of young artists, well, youngish, certainly at the early stages of their career. And I would love, you know, to see opportunities open up for those artists, for Finn Kennedy and for Oisin and Mick, and for, you know, Fintan, Ryan O'Neill's beautiful performance in his Belfast Boy. It would be fabulous if, you know, there was interest generated in the work that those writers, and, you know, Jimmy Campbell, first-time playwright, if it generated interest in their work and kind of could help feed into their development, I think that would be really beautiful outcome.
I mean, yeah, totally. I literally was about to say exactly the same thing there. So you took the words right out of my mouth. But the other thing I think that's really important, certainly about a lot of the plays, is the subject matter and the conversations they've provoked, not just in Northern Ireland, some just here yet because they're in their infancy, like Father the Father was only produced last April here. But if you look at this Belfast Boy and its idea of provoking conversations about male mental health across the island of Ireland, My Left Not, again, male health, but made into a brilliant BBC Three series and raised huge awareness around, especially with teenage boys and the issues around male health there. And Removed, which kind of went into a whole other place that we never, ever thought it would, in the sense that it kind of got adopted by the health and social care sector in both the Republic of Ireland and the North of Ireland, and ended up being kind of almost helping to change the systems within both jurisdictions, certainly being used in very sectoral ways. And again, provoking conversations about the notion of what the experience of being in care is like and how it could maybe be better. That's the dream, actually, if you're talking, as we were at the beginning, about theatre affecting change and stuff, and it starts to happen because other people take it on board. You're not just pushing it yourself. Certainly, obviously, we're experts in the field of making art, but when experts from other sectors start to say, actually, yes, please, it would be wonderful to see those conversations happen on a wider scale, and not just with our work, but in general, that it starts to actually really drive home the idea that theatre can and should affect huge systematic and political change when it wants to. It has the power to do so. So, yeah.
Hear, hear. What about you, Ciaran, as the architect of many of these designs? What do you hope people see?
Well, they'll see what they'll see the pieces. But I suppose for me, it's well, they'll see what it is. I think it's what's important to sort of stress is that all these pieces have been made by a very small team. You know, a very small, hard-working, passionate team. We're as Una would testify, we're grossly underfunded. We don't have vast resources. And personally, and I'm obviously a bit biased, that you may see other products from other companies across the world look like, and I think we stand up there with them in the production values and the quality of our work. But it is very, it's produced on a shoestring by people working very, very hard and passionate about what we do. I think that's important that sort of backs it up, that these projects come from the heart and come from a small, very, very hard working team. And I think the pieces themselves speak for themselves in terms of quality, in terms of how they were picked and how they were chosen, but also how then they are practically designed and made to look as they do. I think it's important that it's recognized that we're a small team. We're a small passionate team, and not a vast organization.
Yeah. Oh, well,
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, our venture into film with this Belfast boy. And I mean, green behind the ears doesn't even cover it. Like, we're pretty good artistic instincts, but, I think somebody started talking to us about storyboarding probably about 6 months into the shoot, when they were like, or well, I was a bit like, oh, maybe that you had to do that. And when you see that, that's a half-hour film. It's completely experimental, probably deeply flawed, but I think we'll always feel very proud and are very fond of it in terms of the circumstances during the pandemic and how we just went, oh right, we're just going to do something. But it just makes me laugh when you start to dip into the world of film. And East Belfast Boy has now been in Cork Film Festival. It just was in Belfast Film Festival last week, and it's been touted around the circuits. But there were like 4. There was me and Ciaran and Conor McGuire, who was the editor, and Phil Kieran. That's it. Half-hour film with 4 human beings, which, you talk to anybody, who works in the film world and they're like, what? So, there's elements of that just kind of make me laugh, which is so different from the theatre aesthetic and the film aesthetic are just like, kind of worlds apart. But where there's a will, there's a way.
From an outside eye, like when you look at these 4 pieces together, the thing that is striking to me is their difference, both in terms of their voice, their tone, their style, their aesthetic. And then when you look at the creative teams and you see the number of kind of repeat offenders, specific, I mean, Ciaran, you're like, but there's something cooking there that I think is very much in the spirit of Prime Cup, which is asking real questions and not giving up, and like there's precision, intention behind it that I think is very exciting. It's not just about the energy of it; it's about the making of it as well.
Yeah, but there's something in that which I kind of think about and have considered, and I understand a little bit more as the years go on, is that I think Ciaran and I both let the work dictate what's needed from either of us, which means to say is work can be made and conceived where your artistic ego dictates the form. And that's where you get work that has a certain style, because stylistically that's the approach of the director and the creative team. Whereas I don't think that we do that. I think we meet the work and see what it needs, and as such that's going to be the impetus for how all else will kind of play out. And I think that that's where you get variance. Maybe we should engage a little bit more with our artistic egos. Maybe the work would be better, but it's not our style. I do think that that's where Ciaran and I work really well together in terms of how we meet the work.
Yeah, well, I think that's very wise to think about, the things that get in the way, like what supports the creation of something original and what stops it. I have a question for Una and Anne. So we talked a lot about young artists, about opportunity, and I'm really inspired by this idea that these are young voices and looking to the future, and also by Emma's point that there's a creative energy that's moving in Belfast. So for both of you, as a producer and as someone who hosts productions and produces and is a meeting point for community, what do you see as the future? What do you see that's coming towards us post-COVID?
I'll go, will I, Una?
Right.
I think the challenges, the opportunities are huge and the challenges are monumental. I think that everything has changed as a result of COVID, and we are simply at the beginning of feeling the effect of that, and some of it good, some of it really not. And sitting where I sit, running a public-facing, publicly funded arts organisation in the centre of Belfast, I better be looking at who is coming or not, and who is creating work or not. There has long been a crisis in, Emma's quite right, it is an incredibly, it's almost febrile and creative space, Belfast at the minute. But the lack of formal and resourced pathways for young artists across all disciplines to be supported as they explore their craft and develop their practice is it's really difficult, really worrying. So I worry about that on one hand. I look forward to us all as a sector innovating and remaining really interested in how we can develop our practice to take account of the context within which we're working. And just before I hand over to Una, Matt, my aspiration for the people who are watching these great works of art by Prime Cut would be that those who are watching it expand their understanding of what it is to be Irish. That, you know, I don't doubt for a minute that the people tuning in are obviously culturally active, deeply knowledgeable and sophisticated in their understanding of the world. But for us in Northern Ireland, the idea that we too are in an interesting place that is part of an island of Ireland. For some of us, those of us living in Northern Ireland define ourselves as British. For some of us, we define ourselves as Irish, but we are indeed part of this landmass of Ireland. So come, it's great.
Thank you for raising that point, a very important one.
I mean, I think from our perspective, since 2015, we've had the great pleasure and privilege to work with close to 20 really amazing independent artists to make new work, to make shows to a greater or lesser degree. With some, we were like an immediate co-producer on shows like Una Doherty's two shows, Hard to Be Soft and Lady Magma, with Finn Kennedy's Removed. Scorch by Stacey Gregg, as I mentioned, with others, with Michael Patrick and Oisin Kearney. On my left note, we came in, as Emma said, giving producing support, but then we were able to commission them as part of the last reveal to write the Border Games. So we've managed to sustain the relationships, and ultimately going forward, that's something we'd really love to continue to do, and we hope we'll be in a position to do so, because it's not a question of saying, come in and we'll just give you advice or increase your capacity as an artist. It's about being able to give an artist a living wage to actually make the work, so that they're not having to do part-time work all over the place to try, which is just essentially just a distraction from the actual work itself. And it shouldn't be the case that anyone should have to do that. I want to echo what Anne said, though. And as much as it's great that we as an organisation are able to support and want to continue to support independent artists of any age at any point in their career, it is also vital that there is far, far greater and better, more realistic funding for independent artists here, because quite honestly, it's shocking. I mean, it's really simple. It is not comparable to the rest of the UK or the island of Ireland. And this is not me having a go at any specific funder. It is just the way it is at the moment. And it would be great if it could come from a governmental level, that our artists, who are some of our greatest exports in terms of the way Northern Ireland is actually viewed internationally, are commensurated properly for that. So I'd really like to see maybe a little push towards that coming on in the future, because certainly as a society, we have nothing to do but gain by it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the theatre artists have been at the forefront of articulating political realities, particularly in Northern Ireland. I think that's one thing that's sort of unusual if you look at Northern Irish theatre, is the proximity to cultural conversations. Like high culture, or what would be considered high culture? Because in America, like, everything is so separate, you know. Final question, and I want to throw this back to you, Emma. And just really simply, what, as an artist, what inspires you about coming out of a time away in COVID, a time of working differently, a time of return?
I suppose as someone who kind of sees theatre as a means of reflecting society, we've got a lot to reflect on at the moment. And you know, and we've got a really, really exciting. You know, I can't. Well, I don't know. Can I share it, Una?
Yes.
Or we have a new co-pro coming up that we're co-producing with the Mac of a new version of Antigone by Darren Murphy, and I'm really excited about that we can take a story that's, you know, based in Greek mythology, and it is so unbelievably prescient in terms of how he has framed Antigone's narrative for the here and the now. And, you know, I mean, it's just wonderful, isn't it, to be able to present all of these issues that we've all been grappling with, but we can do that with theatre in a philosophical way, you know, individualism, society, gender, you know, just on one story that kind of can hold all of those narratives. So I'm excited about that, and I'm inspired about that. One day at a time, Matt. You know, the next project I'm excited about. That's what I'm excited about.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you everybody for participating in this panel today, and like it's been an amazing discussion. It's great to see you all.
It's good, really good to see you too, Matt.
Brilliant to see you, Matt.
No, we missed you. So
the wig is really good, Matt.
I stuck it on.
Really,
you know, got the super glue.
Wig's really. The rug is working. It's good. It's good.
Oh, that's so good. And thank you again, just echoing what Matt just said to all of you. I wish we could chat more. I'm so energized and inspired hearing from all of you. So thank you for sharing that. And just to reflecting on what Anne said, one of my hopes is that comes out of this festival is that people see that Belfast artists are and Northern Irish artists is not monolithic. You know, so the stories and perspectives that are of all four of these shows are so vast, they're so wide. It really is a great showcase of the breadth of interest and curiosity coming from, you know, Belfast artists today. So congrats on such an amazing collection and body of work. And it's only a small sample of the rest of Prime Cut. It's something that I hope also is a teaser for hosting one of your productions in person in Washington, D.C. in the future. I would love to make that happen. So yes.
Yes,
so
let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Thank you again for anyone who's tuning in to the festival. I hope you get to check out a lot of the work. There are individual tickets on sale as well as the festival pass. You can see all four for a discounted rate. Again, such a pleasure with chatting with all of you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Rex.
Rex. Thanks.